3 hours later, Kale counted the dead again, but he had run out of fingers. Yis led them west through a maze of collapsed habitation modules. The other two survivors, a young Verath private named Soren with a concussion that made his fourth eyelid droop, and a human civilian engineer called Marnes who had not spoken since they pulled her from a ventilation shaft, followed in single file. The drain had stopped shelling 20 minutes ago. That was worse. The silence meant they were coming in. "Contact," Soren whispered. His good eyes were fixed on a gap between two toppled cargo containers 50 meters ahead. Kale raised his sidearm. 3 rounds. He had found a fractured service knife in the rubble. That would be round 4. But nothing moved. No plasma flare. No shadow. Yis held up her good hand. "Wait." She was staring past the containers, past the collapsed scaffolding, at one building still standing. It was low, windowless, made of the same gray prefab as the garrison's bunkers. But the ground around it was clean. No craters. No rubble. No bodies. "Why aren't they hitting it?" Marnes spoke for the first time. Her voice was raw, as if she had been screaming somewhere Kale couldn't hear. Yis crawled forward on her belly, her wounded arm dragging. Kale followed. When they reached the edge of the open ground before the building, he saw it. The dust stopped 20 meters from the walls. Not gradually, a clean line, as if an invisible blade had drawn a circle in the dirt. Inside that circle, the air looked different. Thicker. Warmer. "Shield," Yis breathed. "Not military. Too subtle for military, this is." She stopped. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "This is a distress shelter. Civilian. Sealed underground. The drain can't see it?" Kale asked. "Or they don't want to waste plasma on something that isn't shooting back." Yis pressed her communicator against the ground. The screen flickered. Asterisk, "There's a signal. Weak. Automated. It's an emergency beacon from the Verath 6 Colonial Authority. It says, civilian personnel only. Non-combatants." Asterisk. Soren made a wet sound that might have been a laugh. "We're combatants. Look at us. We're all that's left of the combatants." Kale looked back at the clean circle. At the untouched walls. Then at his sidearm. 3 rounds. A broken knife. 2 wounded soldiers and a civilian who had forgotten how to speak until 30 seconds ago. "Non-combatants," he repeated. He pulled off his helmet. Set it down in the dust. Took off his magazine pouch. His armor plates. His unit patch. He laid each piece on the ground like a burial. "I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm a colonist who lost his way home. Anyone asks different, you never saw me in uniform." Yis watched him. For a long moment, her 4 eyes were unreadable. Then she began removing her own armor. One-handed, slow, wincing only once when the field wrap caught on a plate edge. "The drain will search," she said. "If they find the bunker's shield signature, they will cut it open. Hours, not days." "Then we're not hiding," Kale said. He picked up his service knife. "We're arming up from whatever is inside. Every colonial bunker has a munitions locker. Civilian or not." Marnes stood up. Walked past them both into the clean circle. She did not look back. "The passcode is my birthday," she said. "I helped build this one." The bunker door opened with a sound like a long sigh. The air that came out was cold and dry and smelled of recycled metal and fear that had been waiting for 11 days. Kale stepped inside. Behind him, the drain began to shell again, 50 meters east, then 40, then 30. But the bunker's shield held. And in the quiet of the underground, he heard something he had forgotten existed. A working transmitter. The transmitter was older than Kale. It sat in the center of the bunker's main chamber like an altar to a dead god, brushed metal, curved screens, a dish the size of a man's torso pointed at nothing because there was no sky to see. The room around it had been a colonial emergency shelter once. Cots folded against the walls. Water recyclers. Ration crates stamped with dates from 3 Verath cycles ago. Someone had painted a child's handprint on the far bulkhead. Orange. The same orange as the sky outside. Marnes walked past the transmitter without looking at it. She went to the ration crates, opened one with a sharp crack of sealed polymer, and pulled out a protein bar. She ate standing up. Chewed like she had forgotten how to taste. Soren leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting. His drooping eyelid had worsened. The pupil beneath it was fixed and too wide. "I can't see right," he said. Not a complaint. An observation. The left too. They're blurry. Concussion, Yis said. She was already moving through the bunker's side rooms, her good hand trailing along walls until she found a door marked with Colonial Authority hazard striping. "You'll live or you won't. Stay awake either way." Kale stood in front of the transmitter. His reflection ghosted across its dark screen, a face he barely recognized. Older. Hollowed. A smear of something dark across his jaw that he had stopped trying to identify. He pressed a button. The screen lit up blue. System, Colonial Emergency Network, Verath 6. Status, Orbit Relays offline. Surface Relays, 1 of 12 operational. Transmit power, 12%. Range, planetary only. Planetary only. The word sat in his chest like a second heart, cold and useless. He could shout into this machine until his voice broke, and no one beyond Verath's excess burning atmosphere would hear him. There. Isa's voice came from the hazard-striped door. She had gotten it open. Inside was a locker. Not munitions. Tools. Cutting torches. Demolition charges marked mining use only, authorized personnel. 6 of them. Each one enough to collapse a habitation module. 3 of them together might crack the bunker's own shield from the inside. "The drain have heavy armor," Yis said. "We've seen it. The tanks that roll on 6 legs. They will come here when the search pattern reaches this sector. The shield will buy us time. Not safety." "How much time?" She looked at the charges. Did the math in her head, her 4 eyes moving like a calculator's display. 4 hours. Maybe 5 if they prioritize other signatures first. Then they will bring a cutter. And we will be inside a metal box when they do. Kale turned back to the transmitter. Planetary only. 12% power. 1 surface relay still breathing somewhere out in the ash and ruin. He thought about the eastern wall coming down. About his unit starting with 42 soldiers. About the child's scream that cut off like a blade severing a wire. "Then we don't use the transmitter to call for help," he said. "We use it to call them to us." Marnes stopped chewing. Her eyes found his for the first time since the ventilation shaft. "Explain," Yis said. Kale pointed at the screen. "This network still has 1 relay. That means somewhere out there, 1 other bunker, 1 tower, 1 piece of our equipment is still transmitting. The drain are hunting survivors. They're following signals. So we give them a signal." "A trap," Soren said from the floor. His voice was thick but clear. "You want to bait them into a kill box. We don't have a kill box. We have 6 mining charges and 3 guns with 18 rounds between us." Kale picked up one of the charges. It was heavier than he expected. But they don't know that. They see a signal from an intact bunker, they think fortified position. They think we have numbers. They'll send the scout element first. Not the heavy armor. Scouts. Yis was silent. Her 4 eyes had gone flat again, past fear, past calculation, into that colder place she had found sometime in her 30 years of war. We kill the scouts, she said slowly. We take their weapons. Their communicators. Their armor if it fits. Then we become them. And then? Marnes asked. Kale looked at the child's handprint on the bulkhead. Orange. Small fingers. Gone now, probably. Like everyone else. And then we find their command ship. And we put these mining charges somewhere they'll feel it. No one spoke for a long moment. The bunker's life support hummed. Somewhere above, the drain shelling had stopped again. The silence was worse than the noise. Soren struggled to his feet. His drooping eyelid made him look half asleep, but his remaining 3 eyes were clear. I can still pull a trigger, he said. Even if I can't see straight. Marnes finished her protein bar. Folded the wrapper into a small square. Put it in her pocket like she might need it again. I built this bunker. I know every conduit, every service crawl, every emergency override. If you're going to turn it into a trap, I need to show you where the walls are weakest. Yis looked at Kale. Not as a subordinate. Not quite as an equal. As someone who had just made a decision that would get them all killed, but maybe, would make those deaths mean something. 4 hours, she said. Show me the plan. Kale knelt in the dust. Drew a map with his finger. The bunker. The clean circle of the shield. The rubble beyond. The approach corridors where drain scouts would funnel. The blind spots. The murder holes. The places where 6 mining charges could become an avalanche. He drew for 10 minutes. When he finished, he looked up. Any questions? Yis shook her head. Soren shook his head. Marnes was already walking toward the service crawl, tracing conduits with her fingertips. Then we don't have 4 hours, Kale said. We have 3. Because I want to be waiting when they arrive. He picked up his broken knife. Wiped the dust off the blade. Outside, through the shield and the rubble and the smoke, something moved. Not a tank. Not a scout. Something worse. But Kale did not see it. He was already working. End of segment. Ready for the next, the ambush preparation, the first drain contact, or the moment the shield fails.